would like to present you the new version of the CTruck3D series. This is the CTruck3D truck. Well, first of all, let me show you the game and then explain how did the previous version work, in which there was no rigid joint that keeps the trailer and the car together. To understand the approximations, first of all, a short overview of what this game can do. A normal rigid body physics-based simulation. Here there is a rigid joint, which is a pair of constraint forces for which there is an equation that calculates it, and for the wheels of this this polyhedra, there is an approximated model, because these things here are not inertial elements. Pay attention that they are not inertial elements, an approximated model, because otherwise things would get very complicated. Okay. Of course, let's. I think that in order for you to be able to understand the peculiarities of this game, I show you what is automobilism about, like similarly to how it was the famous Terep 2 video game. This is what happens in reality. Trucks going more or less fast, climbing uphill, parking, and so on. So CTruck3D Simplex was aimed at simulating situations like this. You see that the tires are relatively small with respect to the car, and the freedom of motion of the suspension is not very big. At most this, like this. So we need to simulate this as a freely moving rigid body kept in position by constraint forces, which simulated model was sufficient. Okay, and cars with high suspensions usually don't make jumps to use the full freedom of motion of the things. In situations like this, the approximated model would not be good anymore. Look. Here, tires are not enough or too big with respect to the thing, and an approximate model would not do anymore. So we go back to CTruck3D Simplex by letting the trailer go. Look, and now using some figures I will show you how the approximate model works. So let's get figure. We have the rigid body. Okay, call it A. We have a virtual spring that has a proper length L0. The program calculates this distance using the rect triangle theorem. Okay, considering that the normal vector is 0, 1, 0, even if this is not always true, but usually cars don't climb on slopes that are more steep than 45 degrees. Okay, so we using this distance this distance that goes from here perpendicularly, and using this angle, you know, the scalar product, we can calculate the distance. If the distance is minor, then L0 we apply a spring force and a friction and absorption, both viscous and constant. And so we would have, if we apply only this, we have a car without friction. It would just run as if it were a car on ice. So, okay. Note that the spring about which I told you before, the force acts on the vertex of the rigid body, which is the core. This is the rigid body, and we have vertices A, B, C, D, or call them 1, 2, 3, 4. There is this virtual spring which exerts a force in this direction and only in this direction, parallelly to this F. When the distance of the core from the ground is minor than L0. To do this, what is a force acting on a vertex? We have the center of mass, we have a radius for each vertex that connects the center of mass with it. It's a vector. Then we have the force vector FB. Okay. And now this causes to the body an acceleration in the linear acceleration, which is force divided by mass. This is the linear acceleration, linear. And the angular, as you can get on any standard physics book, is torque vector equals cross product of R with F. Okay. This is the variation of angular momentum, and this is the variation of linear momentum. This is angular. Okay. So this is just as if we had a car with high suspensions on ice. There is no guidance, no friction on the ground. There is attenuation of motion, yes, but that's just nothing. Distance is calculated. You can see that it draws the vector that goes from the vertex until to the ground. We should change visualization mode because, okay, take this vertex here. Hello. This is the distance. We lift to that point. Distance augments. Okay, you see. Only for those 4 special vertices. One here, one here, one here, one here. And the force applied here is applied at this vertex, which now you can't see, but it's here. You have the core, and that vertex is here, 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 here. You can see approximated core, tires, physical system simulation. We calculate the distance here. We do some cross products, some scalar products. We calculate. We have constant attenuation. The direction must go down, but that's not important. And we apply the force. You see, we have the body. We decide whether the first body or second body, but in CTruck3D simplex there is only one physically simulated body, so we have only 0 here. To the force I add what I calculated, force of the spring multiplied by the direction vector, and so on, and we do. Of course, we want friction. Without friction we could not steer, and if we consider the main peculiarity of wheels, we understand that it reduces friction in a privileged direction but doesn't let go in another direction. Look, the car doesn't go perpendicularly, except if there is a loss of control over the car. So we can use an approximation. We need to add some things. Lateral friction. First of all, let us revise the definition of friction for a rigid body, and it's suspended here. We have a spring in the game, but consider that we had no spring. Assume that the body touches with the ground here, and we have the rebounds, for which you can find the equations on, for example, David Aberley's game physics. But friction, what does friction do? It calculates the part of the motion of this vertex perpendicular to this. Therefore we do we have a velocity associated with this, v, instantaneous, here. And we have the normal vector, which assume be 0, 1, 0. To get the part of the velocity parallel to the triangle, we have only parallel. There are infinite parallels, but it's easy. We do. Sorry, it's a vector. We do the dot product, scalar product if you prefer calling it so. We must subtract it to the velocity vector, but this is a modulus, this is the length, multiplied by the versor. This is on the direction, this has length 1. Okay? Versor. We have modulus, the length, so we have the parallel part, we indicate it as V is equals to this. This is our definition. In the program this is implemented. Then to do the friction we have to subtract this. We have to give to the body an impulse vector, which is taking this and multiplying it by 1 plus a coefficient of friction which must be minor than 1. You understand? If it is equal to 1, any parallel motion that this had will be compensated. Okay, this model works only for if one single vertex touches the ground. For simultaneous processing of contact points we don't go into the topic so deeply, and neither does this game implement it. Take and look. Assume we give a velocity to the center of mass. We have gravity acceleration. We have let the car get closer to the ground and reach the situation in which this distance here is minor than L0. Okay, the usual L0. So we have to give the guidance friction. A tire lets the car go in this direction, but not in this. This not. The tire acts here, and when there is touchdown, what we do? The tire touches here, notices that that point which doesn't even belong to the body, has his Vx. The body hasn't got a point here, but we give to it. We apply the formula putting in this vector. Okay, this one, I trace it here. We calculate the torque force, the torque and the linear acceleration with this air non-existent, non-x. We calculate the torque and the linear force, and the car works. And what? We consider only the part of this velocity vector perpendicular to this virtual plane defined by the tire. Okay, so we only consider the part perpendicular. The vector was so, we did our formulas and we had this, and we calculated the formula. Look. So hi there, I would like to present you the new version of the CTruck3D series. This is the CTruck3D truck subversion. Well, this was the target, of course, a truck simulator. Here we had to introduce a constraint force that keeps the two bodies together. Body A is this and B is this. Well, let's see. I apply a force here. We are completely gravity-less, suspended in the nothing, so void space. Okay, let's see what happens when I apply the force. I apply the force, it's not enough. More. We see, we focus on the joint here. There. There is a constant force. It keeps the two bodies together. The force here is too small, so let it be a bit stronger. Look what happens. Here we have these two vectors, one pointing in this direction, one in this direction. In fact, a constraint force is a pair of forces with opposite verse. And we see we have a double pendulum which was not hung, and this constant force keeps the two bodies together. Try to focus on it a bit more. Let's get to the explanations. Okay. The new feature introduced in this C source code is this part, as you can see. If we turn on the constant force, we have this part executed in the program. We take this article by Chris Hecker, and we can get an introduction to how to simulate a double pendulum. He calls it a ponytail, but yeah, actually it's the same thing. We have this case here. We have our body A, that is the tractor, the car, and the trailer, and the joint point. This point is part of body A and body B, of course. They are coincident at the starting time, and the relative acceleration must be 0. Okay, you can read this article to understand how it works. The secret behind is this equation here, this one, and this small equation here, which we can simplify by changing variables to this matrix A multiplies vector F minus vector B, and then we solve the linear system and so on. You can read the article. The secret is here. Yeah, summarizing the equations, we get this: body A, body B, magic formula for body A, body B, and we put them together. What we saw here, there was no hit with the ground or walls or anything. There were no collisions. You take chapter 5 from David Aberli's game physics, you can see unconstrained motion. We add this thing and we get what I showed you before. Let's put gravity and see what happens. Some gravity, not too strong. The long vectors here are the force vectors that keep the car, that simulate the force of the tires, but that's just an approximate model, so we treat the forces that keep the car from falling through the ground just external forces, and there are no joint forces, so we have only one rigid joint. Okay, let's see. You can see that despite collisions, still keeps the two bodies together. Let's see, let's drive a bit and see what complications arise, because we have to deal with a numerical error here. That despite the formula calculates exactly the force that must be, the force pay that must be applied here to keep the two bodies together, there is some numerical error accumulated. As you can see, after some simulation time, the two vertices will be coincident or not anymore. Okay, use smaller time steps. We can do it, but of course this is not important. Let's start the simulation and deactivate at some point you can see a truck. We drive back. We see that it hits with the wall there. Okay, we get in trouble. We deactivate the force and drive away with the car that now is free. We input some more gravity. Okay, we can focus a bit and see what happens. We have the car, we have the usual rigid body simulation, and we can drive the car. Can't go very fast because I had to put a very small time step, and the computer can't calculate so many simulation steps in a second, so we have some problems. Okay, reconstitute the conditions of CTruck3D simplex. I had it in the previous simulations, it was 0.15, here is 0.35, so I have it greater. Gravity, save, fire compile, and then during the game I deactivate the constraint force. Okay, initial is the initial calculation. Okay. With such a big time step we couldn't get a good simulation of the joint at all. Of course it would be easy to limit the game to single cars and a nice scenario, some textures, internal view, here you are. But it would be too much limited. You have also alternative graphical representation here, textures. Oh no, this vector is I can't forget to change to get the graphics not to draw it. Oh yeah. This would already be a good game, but this is just CTruck3D simplex. But since it's going to be the basis for the Iron's Mills of 3D action game, limiting it to single card would be stupid. You could well see that CTruck3D Truck is a formidable piece of software, because it was not enough to add some collisions to the simple rigid body simulation that you could read in Chris Hacker's previous article, for example, or in Game Physics Chapter 5 Constraint Motion. CTruck3D simplex, the most complicated thing that is done is here. It's just a solution of a collision between rigid body and a surface with infinite mass, and nothing more, and the hack on the simplified physical system of the car and tires and the spring. But in CTruck3D Truck we had to add this joint, and we saw that it's not a double pendulum floating in void space, because that would not be a very funny game. Simulating the presence of a rigid joint is not just a special effect, and to apply any hugged physics would be very difficult. It's one of those things which are almost impossible to do without real good physics. So let us do this. Reduce this to a very small value here. Put 0, 1. We let the gravity recompile. Some warnings, but of course, okay. Here we are. It will be very slow as frame rate, but so we had to do here in this software something that is not a special effect, and necessarily requires far more computer power than without for a game which has no tracks. A game for such as CTruck3D can run on a Pentium 1 very well. CTruck3D Simplex can also. This could not, because you would get very low frame rate. So this is a serious software, and it's not serious because of incredibly funny and spectacular special effects, but because of right physics in simulating a truck.